Well, we have a busy night and a busy couple of days of weather ahead as winter is still going strong across much of the northern plains, back through the northern Rockies and into the Pacific Northwest. And meanwhile, if you know it's cold out there in the west, well, it's got to be warming up in the east, and there'll be a transition zone between the two. And it looks like it'll be another busy week of severe weather in parts of the plains and the middle and the Mississippi Valley. So we'll have all of that and much more to come tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show. Still waiting for Joe Rayo to show up. It is 7:32 Eastern Time on the 11th of April. So far, not a peep out of him. So just kind of waiting to see whether he's going to pop in or not. But in the meantime, we can tell you that you can see maybe I got a little bit of color because I did spend some time at the beach today, so that was nice. I'm live tonight from Fort Pierce, Florida, and if you don't know where Fort Pierce, Florida is, it's on the East Coast, north of West Palm Beach by a little less than 100 miles, and I'm in Port St. Lucie County, so this is where they play the preseason here for baseball. I think it's the Yankees. Who plays in Port St. Lucie? I forget if it's the Yankees or it's the Mets. I'm thinking it's the Mets that play in Port St. Lucie. I've lost all track of that sort of thing. But Joe Rayo should know. So he's just popping in right now. And let's see. There he is. Hi there.
There he is. There,
So, who plays the preseason in Port St. Lucie? Is it the Mets?
yes.
Okay. Well, that's where I am. I was just telling the folks on the chat board that that's where I'm located. So I was at the beach today for a little.
Oh,
Yep.
I mean, this is absurd.
By the way, in the Northwest, just east of Seattle, in the mountains there. I mean, there's a fairly high probability of at least two, and four. I mean, they're not in the, the 12 or the 18 or the 24, but there is some snow that is going on in the Pacific Northwest, down into Oregon and even into Northern California. Again, this is when you have a trough that has moved into the western part of the United States. This is what happens. And from the standpoint of total precip, by the way, just looking at this is the 7-day forecast from WPC, and you've got 2.5+ inches of liquid shown from northern Mississippi on up into southern Indiana and southern Illinois. Now, this is all going to be generated by the severe weather that's going to be occurring ahead of this next storm system. But meanwhile, 1.5 to 2 inch liquid precip amounts being indicated across North Dakota. So you're talking about snow ratios probably at about 15 to 18 to 1 with that to produce the 36, and bigger amounts up and down the mountains in along the west coast of liquid 2.5 inches plus
Right.
in parts of Washington, Oregon,
The
and
fluff
down into,
factor.
yes. So there's going to be some fluff factor here, but you know what? At the end of the day, it's 3 feet is 3 feet in my view, and I if it's fluff factor that gives you the other two, that's just the way it works sometimes, and sometimes it's all heavy wet snow. By the way, right now in Bismarck, North Dakota, it's 51 at the moment,
Okay.
and I'm just
Ah,
trying to see. Yeah, so here's the on their snow forecast, Matt. So Minot, they've got 20 to 30. Um, uh, Dickinson, North Dakota, in 15 to 30, 15 to 25 in Williston. Trying to see where, Bowman, 12 to 20, Elgin, 12 to 20. Bismarck is right on the border of 12 to 24. And amounts tail off as you get into southeastern North Dakota, where we're looking at 2 to 3 around Fargo and 5 to 10 as you go north and west of there toward Jamestown, North Dakota. Devil's Lake at 15 to 20. So listen, for the dead of winter, this is pretty impressive when you think about it.
it is.
Let alone for almost the
I mean,
middle of April.
you said it correctly before when you were talking about about the fact that the wet snow versus dry snow. I mean, the very least you would expect at this time of the year, and especially now since it's 51 degrees in Bismarck, home of, by the way, the Raccoon National Cemetery. Uh, you would expect that this be that you would expect, all right, it's going to be it'll be a lot of snow, but it'll be a wet snow. And really, it's not going to be a wet snow. It's going to get so cold that we're going to have that puff or fluff factor come in. And 15 to 18 to 1, this may be the kind of snow that a little difficult to make snowballs out of. So it really is quite something. I mean, like, I know, for example, on the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell tonight, and by the way, they now have the Weather Channel backing them up on major weather events. They say, let's go to the weather, our partners in this, the Weather Channel. And the guy who did the weather tonight on the CBS News, Mike Bettis. Do you know who Mike Bettis is? Have you ever heard of him? I don't watch the Weather Channel.
Well, neither do I. Yeah, I've heard the name.
Anyway, he's making, well, he should, the threat of severe weather, the threat of thunderstorms, high winds, tornadoes, anything else. And he mentioned nothing, Joe, about this big blizzard. And I turned, we watch at our house, we watch the news while we're having dinner. I turned to Renata and I said, what happened to the blizzard? Especially since, by the way, Norah O'Donnell, in her listing of all the headlines tonight, and she said, and a blizzard in parts of the country. And they threw it to this guy, and all he's talking about is the thunderstorms and the tornadoes, and he didn't mention the blizzard once. And I said, how do you not mention a 3-foot blizzard in the plane station? Renata looked at me and says, well, everybody knows nobody lives out there.
Well, look, I'm sure somebody said, hey, population centers, most people being impacted more by the severe weather as opposed to the tornadoes. We here on the Joe and Joe show, however, do not make decisions based on populations. Okay, so we just kind of follow the weather, and if the weather is going on, so we pay attention to the Dakotas. Also, Norah O'Donnell just signed a new contract, Joe, as you know. So apparently she now can afford bronzer. Because she was berating apparently the makeup people at CBS because she didn't like the bronzer they were using for her makeup. So now that she's got this multi-million-dollar contract, she can go out and buy new bronzer. We on the Joe and Joe Weather Show can't afford bronzer. Okay, I mean, my God, we would just probably, the only time of bronzing we'd use is if we stood out in the sun and got a tan. So, which is what I did today. At least spent a little time in the sun. So anyway,
these people, they complain about the fact. One of the things that they complain about is the fact, like, we only have 22 minutes to give you the news because out of the 30 minutes it's allocated to commercials and everything else. And I say you could have a lot more time for your news if you didn't do what you're doing now. When I used to, I'm saying with you, Joe, and I'm sure a lot of people of a certain age. Remember, we tune into Cronkite, for example, and you hear the announcer, this is the CBS Evening News with Walter Cronkite. Boom, there's Walter. Boom, here we go with the news. That's not the case anymore because now you have this dramatic music, and now you have Norah O'Donnell standing there, and for the next 2 minutes, she's listing all the stories they're going to talk about tonight in like a headline, like bullet points or whatever. And I'm saying, yes, Norah. Yes, Norah. Then they go back to the announcer. This is the CBS Evening News with Norah O'Donnell. And now it's 6:33, and now she begins with the first story. And I'm saying, Norah, you could have already been halfway through the second story.
She begins with the first story, and then next you hear, coming up next on the CBS Evening News, and then there's another list of things. I don't, Joe.
And it's always,
I don't watch. I don't care. I really don't. I just don't.
And your daughter used to work on the CBS Evening News, correct?
Oh, yeah, well, she worked with Scott Pelley when Scott Pelley was anchor, who, by the way, was
professional
class. I met him. I went down to see my daughter one day. What a class act. What a gentleman. He was so kind to me. He really was.
Right.
I will also tell you that without getting too into it too much, but if you go back and you look at some of the stories that uh, came out about CBS behind the scenes and the very toxic culture that they have there, um, well, not a surprise. Let's leave it. Let's put it like that. And I'm not going to say anything publicly, but we could always have a private conversation, you and I, Joe, about about this. So anyway, I'll just leave it at that. That is the ultimate tease because I'm never going to reveal publicly what I'm talking about. So let's go to severe weather because that is what is uh, on the other side of this with regards to the developing snowstorm. And what's interesting to me about the severe weather is the fact that over the next 3 days, it basically plays out in a lot of the same geography. And if you look at the radar tonight, we're starting to see the first of some severe thunderstorm warnings in parts of southeastern Oklahoma and into Arkansas, which is where we have the risk areas. And probably in terms of the risk, tonight is the least, let's call it the least riskiest, even though there is the least riskiest. That was pretty interesting. But there it is on the
That's like a tongue
radar.
twister.
Yes. But there you are on the on the satellite I'm sorry, on the radar, and this is what it looks like in terms of the risk zone from SPC. With the severe thunderstorm watch that just went up in parts of north central Texas, and the tornado watch that you see in red there covering much of Arkansas and eastern Oklahoma. The marginal risk extends up into southern Illinois. Now, as we look at tomorrow, the risk area expands north-south, and we have this pretty large area of enhanced risk from central Texas northward through eastern Oklahoma, eastern Kansas, northwest Missouri, and much of the state of Iowa and eastern Nebraska, all in enhanced risk for severe weather. And by the way, that enhanced risk area is also includes a 10% tornado risk on the northern end of that up in Iowa, but a very
Right.
large 5% risk area. And SPC in their discussion, Ms. Fowlerite, who was on the chat board tonight, asked us to address this, but they're apparently talking about the thermodynamics. I'm just pulling a line right here. Thermodynamics and the kinematic environment across Oklahoma, southern Kansas will be supportive of supercells if convection can develop. While this potential is noted, uncertainty is too high to warrant a 10% probability there at this time. So you're looking at least from the standpoint a day before that they are certainly looking at the possibility of some very strong cells. I'm just trying to take a look. I'm going to see what the let's go to the forecast, see if we get the Cape out of this. Analysis. Let's go to the central part there. I got to click on the box. Just trying to see what these Cape numbers are. Okay, where is it? You know what it is, Joe? They got too many choices. So they've got surface space caped, 100 millibar mixed layer cape, most unstable cape. I don't know which cape. What cape should I wear? The red one, the pink one, the blue one? So anyway, this is
Maybe you should go to Cape Canaveral.
right, exactly. So this is for, I'm just looking here. This is for tonight. So yeah, this is actually right now pretty impressive Cape numbers. 2,500 to 3,000 on the Cape values in southeastern Oklahoma and north central Texas. And this is where we have our tornado watches up and the severe thunderstorm watch up at the moment. I want to just see if I can get a look at tomorrow's. Where's the time element on this? I don't think it goes out far enough on the wrap forecast is out to 6 hours. Yeah, I mean, this only looks like it goes out to about 6 hours, so I can't really take a look at tomorrow's stuff from here, but maybe we could take a look at it from the standpoint of what's on the models. So why don't we try the European FGen? How's that? I'll bring up the FGen on the European. and take a look at this. I'm going to use the 850. Okay. So tomorrow's Tuesday, correct? Are you with me,
Last
Joe?
I
Yeah.
looked,
Yeah, look,
I'm
I'm
here.
looking at the 850 F-Gen here, Joe, on tomorrow night across much of Kansas. It is pretty impressive on the F-Gen. And then again, if you go into Wednesday, then you start to swing it a little bit further to the east, and it's pretty impressive by Wednesday evening in eastern Iowa, Missouri, and into Illinois. As the low by that time has already probably moved up into the western lakes. This looks like a pretty this looks like a pretty robust looking severe weather out potential here for tomorrow and Wednesday. A quick view on my part. I like to always look at the 700 millibar just to take a look at what it looks like with the jet streaks, because those usually work pretty well. I mean, there's a solid, decent jet tomorrow night in parts of Nebraska and Iowa, and even more impressive Wednesday night into Thursday in eastern Iowa down into Missouri and Illinois. You can see that arm that just kind of swings around there. That's a pretty sharp looking trough too, that goes negatively tilted. So I'm gonna put I would put money on the possibility that there's going to be a rather robust outbreak of severe weather tomorrow and again on Wednesday in the area described by SPC. I think it does make a lot of sense.
Well, you can't, again, the guys and gals at SPC, they are specifically looking for severe weather. That is their forte, if you will. So I'm not going to argue with them to any degree on this. And it looks like it's going to be, this has been incredible down in that particular sector of the United States for all of these weeks. It's like week number 4 now that this same area of the country is, seeing the red flags get raised again for the potential of severe weather. When you go back, Joe, to last December, that incredible on December the 10th, that incredible outbreak of tornadic activity back in the middle of December. I mean, that was mostly Kentucky, but it's incredible how this one region of the United States has been just getting battered like the
Yeah,
proverbial pinata
yeah.
for severe weather. It really is something.
I'm just looking here too at the dew points starting from today, which pushed up into the 60s all the way up into southern Missouri. Tomorrow, you're going to see those 60 dew points go all the way up to southern Wisconsin, past Chicago, even over almost into northern Wisconsin tomorrow night. The 60 dew points and mid to upper 60 dew points across Texas and Louisiana on the southern end of this. And those dew points are, the surge of dew points in, ahead of the weather system is also what's impressive are the dew points behind it, because I'm looking at dew points down in Texas, for example, in western Texas that are going to be dropping down below zero. And also in parts of Nebraska and into Kansas, seeing dew points dropping down in the single digits to near zero. So that's very cold, dry air that's behind this. And ahead of it, of course, you're getting all this warm advection and tropical moisture coming out of the Gulf of Mexico. The Gulf is wide open. That air is shooting right up the Mississippi Valley. I mean, this is really just a ripe situation for severe thunderstorms. No question in my mind.
The Texas Norther, or a blue norther, as they call it in Texas. And I call it that, I suppose, because when the cold, dry air rushes down, it literally, it pours sometimes straight down from northern Canada through the plains all the way down into Texas. And my presumption is that when the leading edge of that cold, dry air pushes in, like a sharp edge of blue coming down from the north, a blue norther, and again that is accompanied by much colder temperatures. My sister at one time was up for a job at the Children's Television Workshop, Joe, Sesame Street, and so what she had to do was to make up a story that the Muppets on Sesame Street would go about telling or talking about or whatever. So she came up with a story where one of the like Grover, for example, He said, well, it's very, very hot out here. Oh, it's very, that kind of thing. And all of a sudden, within the span of a few seconds, it goes from very hot to cold, and now it starts to snow. And when she handed in that whimsical story, the guy who was the head writer on Sesame Street almost, he said, we can't do this kind of story on Sesame Street. I mean, it's impossible. How possibly tell? He said, thanks a lot, but we'll pay you for. He told me that. I said, you should have told your boss or the guy at Sesame Street. There was a time I distinctly remember this in Childress, Texas. They had like 94 degrees, and the next day, thanks to a blue norther, it was 11 with blizzard conditions. And I said, it can happen. It most definitely can happen. If any place could happen, it could be in Texas, Oklahoma, that area.
It was in New
and
York
you ought to
City.
go back to this
It was
guy
in New York City 3 years ago.
Right. Well, Groundhog Day, we had a 45-degree temperature with heavy rain, and within 3 hours, it was 10 degrees with heavy snow.
Just go back to, what was it, 2018, when we went from near 80, or near 80 the day before, to 19 with heavy snow the next morning, and
yeah. So it can happen.
It can happen. It happens all the time.
She didn't want to go back and make trouble. She said, if I go back and start screaming, they're gonna maybe I'll get blacklisted or something like that. I said, how could you get blacklisted if you're quoting fact? Tell him your brother is in this weather game. I'll go right down there and scream
Right.
at them. Because it was a pretty good job that she had a chance to get, but the stupidity, of one guy, like, well, we can't do that. I thought it would have been fun to see Grover or Cookie Monster or whatever having snow after, being exposed to like 100-degree temperatures. But that's life.
Yep. Meanwhile, on the satellite tonight, we actually squeezed in a decent day today over much of the Northeast until the clouds are starting to finally roll in. The weekend was, I thought yesterday would have turned out better than it did. The cold, unstable air just did not want to get out of the way.
Right. It's true. And on Saturday, we actually had reports of hail.
Yes.
In parts of our area because of the instability. So
in the meantime,
and of course, this weekend's a big weekend because we have Passover, which starts at sundown on Friday. We have Easter on Sunday. Good Friday, of course, on Friday. So the weather doesn't look all that bad as we get into the upcoming. And I'll tell you, for considering what time of the year this year Easter's coming, Easter's coming relatively late, April the 17th, but yet it's more like the kind of weather you would expect in early April or even maybe the end of March, at least temperature-wise.
Yeah. Well, at least we're going to probably get a warm up in the eastern U.S. And ahead of that, we've got clouds, and there is going to be a little bit of rain that'll come through late tonight. It's on the radar this evening. You can see it back in Pennsylvania and down into West Virginia and Ohio. A couple of patches of heavier rain, but it's mostly on the light side. And this is air that is coming into the eastern part of the. With tomorrow, I mean, it's assuming that the rain gets out of the way tomorrow morning, partly to mostly sunny skies by midday. We should be able to take it up into the 70s. I think the issue for Wednesday is going to be the wind direction, maybe more south or south-southeast in some instances, so that knocks the temperatures down by a few pegs. But then Thursday, ahead of the next cold front, I think that's the day where we could see temperatures, maybe see some 80-degree highs in parts of New Jersey and eastern and southeastern Pennsylvania down into Maryland and northern Virginia. Might get the 80-degree number close to New York City, depending on how much sun we get.
Well, you remember last week, the Climate Prediction Center actually had not just extremes in terms of cold temperatures, but right along the mid-Atlantic coast, they were highlighting, possible extreme temperatures on the warm side. And I said, well, what does that mean? Like 90? And as you just mentioned, 80s, it still might happen. It still might happen for coastal, maybe not coastal New Jersey, but for coastal North Carolina or, near Norfolk, Virginia. It just
Meanwhile, here's what the GFS looks like. You can see the storm out the low in Utah, which has a very big circulation to it. It's a 987 low that moves up into northeastern Colorado and eventually finds its way up into Iowa there by the time we get to Tuesday night, and the snow into North Dakota. The low center, very tight gradient, by the way, too. So wind, obviously a big issue, which is why you saw those high wind warnings and wind advisories we showed you earlier. You can see the GFS just backing it up with severe weather breaking out uh, tomorrow night in East Texas and in parts of Arkansas and over into Louisiana. And then on Wednesday, a fairly impressive looking line that forms from Missouri through Illinois and Indiana down to Western Kentucky, Western Tennessee. And then that pushes eastward. Now, it doesn't really hold together all that well. I think we'll probably try through in the chance that there could be a shower or thunderstorm late Thursday. First off, before we get there tonight, you see there's a little bit of rain there tomorrow morning. Uh, we'll call it a warm front. It's a frontal boundary of some kind. If you want to call it a cold front, then you just have to uh, understand the fact that the air behind the front is actually warmer than the air ahead of it. But and then on Wednesday, the isoparts kind of bend around a bit because of where the high is. So as we said, Wednesday's more of a south wind, and that usually takes a couple of ticks off the high temperatures. Eventually going to southwest though as we get into Wednesday night and Thursday. And now when this front comes through later, plains at this point has now moved up into north of Lake Superior, just sort of spinning away. So we might see a shower or a thunderstorm late in the day Thursday. It's possible that we could see maybe a marginal risk. I don't see anything beyond that with regards to thunderstorm activity Thursday night and northwest. And as far as the weekend is concerned, Joe, I think there's another front that comes through here on Saturday, and Easter Sunday looks to be on the cool side, but dry. And after that, I don't know, there's some question early next week as to whether some kind of low comes out of the plains and then finds its way off the mid-Atlantic coast, whether it's just a simple case of a low with an area of rain with it, or if it becomes a little more problematic, if it decides to maybe want to cut off the East Coast. I think that's a long shot possibility. But for now, I would say Sunday looks fine, but on the cool side, and then maybe some rain next Monday, which is tax day, by the way, as the next low moves on through. So there you have it.
Easter Monday. Easter Monday. Yeah,
yes.
That's. I hope Monday's not too taxing for you, Joe.
I've already filed, and I filed weeks ago, so I'm long done. All right, so look, let's quickly run through Briller Jeopardy. Okay, let me see where if I
yes,
have.
Yes, and I do have.
You have it.
I think I have it.
All right, let me just take a look. You probably do. Let's see. Yes, because the Mets thing was the last one. So let's go through this quickly, Joe. I would appreciate it.
Okay, we'll do it quickly then. We go from Hitchcock to high finance for Mr. Chiaffi for Briller Jeopardy. The Fortune 500 is out for 2022. Can you name at least 10 of the top 20 companies based on revenue? And he gives 5 hints. 1, at least 3 are car companies. 2, at least 3 are health related. 3, at least 1 is famous for soda stream.
All right.
Soda stream canisters.
All right. All right. That's PepsiCo.
4, at least 1 is a major supermarket chain, and 5, at least 3 are communication companies. Get 10 out of 20 for a 1% share of any of these companies.
All right, so I'll say, well, PepsiCo was 1, which you've just mentioned. In terms of revenue, okay, and at least 3 of them are car companies.
At least 1 are car companies.
At least 1 is a car company. So
yes.
I would say either General Motors or Ford, so it'll probably be GM. I think GM is bigger. So
Yes, mark
PepsiCo,
of excellence, GM.
PepsiCo, General Motors. Um, what are we talking about here? Uh, Healthcare. Oh my God. Um, well, I would think Apple's on that list. You know what, Joe? I'm sorry. You know what? Let's hold this till tomorrow.
All right,
Let's hold this till tomorrow. I'm not,
all right,
literally.
okay,
All right. So, folks,
all right.
we will be back tomorrow at 7:30 Eastern time. By the way, the schedule
Eight
this,
thirty.
or 8:30 tomorrow. Okay.
8:30,
So the
Joe.
schedule this week is tomorrow at 8:30, Wednesday at 7:30. We're going to be off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and back next Monday. Okay. So
Okay, all
everybody,
right.
thanks for being here. Have a great night. We'll see you tomorrow. Night, everybody.
Night night.